He's
on his way.
Okay.
I'm just gonna have this up in case they have questions.
Hey. Hey, Darren.
Hello.
Now, I'm Dianne Hobart, and we are tickled to have tonight a little tete-a-tete, if you will, and we're going to be talking about show choir costumes. And one of our guests is Mr. Darren Dale, and Darren is known all over the country as one of the best judges in show choir.
I wouldn't go that far.
He's been there, done that, right, Darren?
I have.
But we're going to cover some things tonight that, as I was thinking about this, a new director kind of might want to know some of these things. You know, there are a lot of young new directors because a bunch of us retired. And so there are a lot of new ones. And we thought we would cover a few subjects that might be helpful as they're selecting costumes. And so anyway, we're just going to jump right in. We also have Toney Keeler who's coming, and Toney is the director at Northwest Rankin High School show choir. So we have a judge's standpoint and a director's standpoint, and he's caught in traffic, so we're just going to go right ahead and he'll slip in a few minutes. But Darren, why don't we start with style? No, let's start with quality. The quality of the garment. Now, as a judge, it's probably going to be kind of hard to talk about quality, although can you tell quality from where you're sitting? At a judge's table?
I think sometimes quality does not always mean expense.
Okay.
You know, sometimes I think people think, oh, I have to get the most expensive thing, and that's not always the case.
Right.
The quality, but sometimes you get what you pay for, I
That's
guess.
right,
You
that's
know, but
right.
that does not mean you cannot find something
Yes,
quality that's
yes,
inexpensive.
Yes.
But sometimes, you know, you have to, some of these dresses are maybe meant to be worn to a prom or something,
Right.
but not meant to
Not
be
for the
worn.
stage.
All these performances, ripping the zipper open,
Right.
changing out of it,
Right.
changing back in it really quick. You know, so I feel like not all of them are meant to do that. So, you know, the dress should be kind of a work in progress because
it's
stuff
got
will
to
fall
hold up,
off.
yeah.
And so that, you know, judges look at that on stage. Not necessarily how expensive the dress is, but, you know, or is the hem torn and hanging off? Is there
Right.
holes in it?
Or are they uneven?
Yes.
Or, matter of fact, at Dianne Hobart Limited, we now put in these heavier zippers. The invisible zippers are a nightmare because at every performance you're going to have one rip. So we put in a heavier zipper in the back to make sure that they last.
Right.
But in the past, when I was directing, I've had costumes that I've gotten, and the size 4s were all different lengths on different girls. And that, you know, I think those are some of the things you need to address as you're ordering costumes, wouldn't you think, for quality?
Well, you know, I look back to when I was a first-year teacher.
Where were you first year?
Opelika, Alabama.
Opelika, yes.
And I don't know how I survived. Gail McGinnis helped me back then. I was so grateful to her. And I remember our costumes, well, I just thought, oh, I'm going to call them and be like, this is what we need. In a week or two, we'll get them in. But that's not the case. And so we had our fall concert, and the costumes came in maybe a day or two before. And I just thought, well, they're going to put them on and we walk on stage.
Right.
But that's not always the case
Yeah,
either. So, you know, it's very important to have a seamstress that can help you just with the fit on every girl, because that's just very important.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is when I first started teaching, I feel like those chauffeur moms I had then were more of like a generation like my mom, that they learned how to sew in school and
They
stuff.
don't know how to sew these days.
And then by the
Some of
time,
them,
10 years later when I was teaching,
Yes.
the mamas were more like my sister's age, that, it was rare to find a mom that sewed.
And I will say this, if you have that special mom, you're very fortunate.
So make sure you appreciate
Treat them
her.
right, just treat them right.
Yes, so that's very important to find a good
Right.
seamstress.
Right, and also, I'm always gonna bring it back to DHL, but also we have a measuring chart that we follow, and, every girl is measured specifically, and the style of the dress, like if you take this dress for instance, this dress right here, you have the waist is pretty significant as far as the measurement. I mean, that waist, that's gonna be your most important measurement to get. Then the next one on this dress would be the bust, because there's no letting out of the waist and not much letting out of the bust. But you just have to know, and you really trust who you're working with to help you through that process. And we're always happy to help our customers through that process. But, Darren, let's talk a little bit about style.
Okay.
And when I say style, I'm talking about the movement of the costumes, possibly the variety of the different styles of costumes, and does color play a part from a judge's standpoint?
There have been different trends through the years, as far as color is concerned, and I feel like maybe early 2000s there kind of became a trend of, using contrasting colors and using that in your choreography. And so one of my pet peeves now is when people utilize two colors, and I'm thinking, oh, that's so pretty, but then they don't use that in their blocking.
Right.
Because that's so many missed opportunities of some cool, like, color pop pictures that
You hear
could
that?
be made.
Directors, do you hear this? This is your judge talking to you, so you might want to oversee your choreographer right here.
Well, I mean, these days I think a lot of people have caught on
Yeah.
with that.
That's good.
It's hard because if you have somebody that has to be out, then it's like,
Oh,
great,
I
in this
know.
position
Yes.
we need a blue dress, but that girl has a yellow dress. And so, but it's a headache.
You put
but-
her in the middle.
Yeah, it's a headache, but the finished product is great when you can. It just brings the pictures out, and color can just really bring out the choreography.
I remember one year I directed, and we did Earth, Wind, and Fire was our opener song, and I was like, I'm gonna change it all up. I'm not gonna do the traditional dress at the beginning. We're gonna do the fun, funky thing. So it was the bright yellow and the fuchsia tops, and our backdrops were these psychedelic panels that were just gorgeous. And I'll never forget, one of the parents came to me after the performance and they said, oh, Dianne, you should have heard that audience when that curtain opened and all those colors were on the stage. They were like, that is gorgeous. So, again, I think color does play a pretty significant role in planning your shows. So.
Which, including the color of like the backdrop, that can
Right.
all be taken into consideration to complement each other.
While we're talking about colors, tell me your thoughts on nude colored costumes with like the silver, because we see a lot. This is kind of a trend, and you kind of see it, but sometimes on the stage it just kind of washes the person out.
I feel like sometimes the nude colors may make you look washed out, and this may be a southern thing. This may be a southern thing, but if I ever had a costume like that, I would tell the girls to get spray tan.
I used to do that too. I don't think it's a trend anymore, the spray tan thing.
Well, I mean,
I know.
well, back in the day it was the tan in bed. Sorry,
Yes,
I said
yes,
it,
yes,
but
it was the tan in
these
bed.
days it's safe to get a spray tan. But
I
to
know.
give you, everybody looks better on stage with a little bit of
Yeah.
color.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about variety. And when I'm talking about variety, I'm talking about something like this versus something like the straight silhouette. What are your opinions on that? I guess it's got to maybe fit the music.
Yes, I mean, it should fit the music somewhat. I'm not.
You're not hung up on
I'm not hung up on
traditional show choir
right
style.
because it's like if it fits the music. If you're doing some like funky pop song and wearing like that's not what you would wear if you were at a concert doing that. But I like that classic look. So I don't think it necessarily has to fit the music. But as far as variety goes, I would like to see a group come out and that and then change into something that looks just like that.
It. Exactly. Yeah. And I kind of find, and I don't know, you're judging all over the country, but I kind of find that maybe the Midwest might be a little bit more traditional with show choir costuming. Do you feel like that? Because
it just depends. You see everything everywhere.
Yeah.
You really do. And
well, and I'm gonna jump in here once again for DHL and say that our theme really is set yourself apart, and we want to help the show choir find their identity. And it could be just for the year with their particular show that they're doing, but we want it to be something different, something specific for that show choir, and we don't want it to look like everything else. And that's hard to do because show choir's been around a long time. But I think there are fresh looks, and we definitely can help you with that.
yeah, and with style, also talking about the fit. Talking about having a seamstress.
Yes.
It's these days I feel like a lot of score sheets are kind of going away from including costuming on the score sheet, which I'm fine with because the kids don't have any control over that.
Right, and budgets are different for different areas and different schools, and
And when that was a category, the only time I feel like I ever, I guess you could say, took off points from somebody is if their costumes were just offensive.
Right.
And
Well, and to say offensive, I'm gonna jump in and say, when I think of offensive, I think if the skirt is entirely too short. And especially, this is something for directors to think about, because if you're on a stage that's up above your audience, they're looking up, and it's even shorter, if you're sitting below the stage. So I think that is offensive.
And you need to consider, with the style of costume you get, you need to consider the body type of every person you have in your group.
Right.
Because you don't want to have like the 6 foot tall model and be like, oh, that looks good on her, so let's put it on everybody. And sometimes when you see costumes, you can tell. I felt bad when I've seen costumes that are just so fitted. I've seen like fitted spandexy type things, and you can just see that you can tell they're not confident.
Right.
Right.
And that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Is if they come out and they're like, I know I look good, I'm confident in this, no matter what your size or height, whatever. It needs to be something that if the girls are self-conscious, like, oh, this, spandex, I have like a roll here or whatever.
Right.
If they're self-conscious about that, they're not going to put their best performance out there. So it's just I think that's one of the big things too, is considering every body type and coming up with something that, you need to try to make it flattering to every body type.
Right.
And there's options for every body type.
There are options. There are, and we can help you plan that as you go through this planning process. Let's talk about movement. I have to show you something, Darren. I have to show you one of these new samples that I just absolutely, I just love. You sit right there and I'm grab it. I didn't realize it was this far away. But I think this is adorable. And it's so functional. Look at this. Now this is your Barbie pink. So let's don't, get too upset about it yet. But this is your Barbie pink. But look at this. I mean, we've got 2 dresses in one. Look, Darren, look at this zipper.
Oh, so you can take that off.
You can take the whole bottom layer off so that you've got one particular dress. And I can just see this in so many different colors. And I can see a school that's on a tight budget that can only do one costume. And they get something like this, maybe they start, and then they take that train off, or whatever you want to call it, the skirt. And then we put leggings on or something like that underneath that. But anyway, I thought that was fun.
Well, that's, talking about the cost and being cost effective. One
Yes.
of my pet peeves is when when you were saying, just get that one dress. It was judging this year, with COVID and everything, it was almost refreshing to see some of the groups kind of pull back a little bit.
Pull back.
One beautiful costume, because sometimes you'll see these groups that they're spending their whole show going on and off, changing into 5 ugly costumes.
Right.
Which it's like, put that money that you spent on 5 ugly costumes, get one good one.
With quality.
People just think like, oh, well, you have to have a costume change. You don't.
You don't. And that's one thing that we try to tell our customers is initially when we have that first conversation, we try to say, okay, give us an estimate of what your budget is, because we want to help you stay within your budget, whether it's an in-stock dress or whether it's a custom design dress. We can help you stay in that budget. And, COVID really did a number on everybody.
Yeah.
And it really, it really did make us think, okay, what is our priority here?
Right.
But I also will say, it has been wonderful to see it coming back. We were in Indiana last week, Darren, and we had directors from all over, from Fort Wayne and Indianapolis, that dropped by with appointments to see us. And it was, you could just see the excitement, and the creativity of the shows in their heads, it was fun.
That was judging this year was kind of saying, I was just honored to, see anything
I know.
on stage. And I just,
I don't know how they did it.
I don't either. And I tip
Because-
my hat to all the directors
Yes.
because I was just, the first time I judged, I hate to say my expectations were kind of low. I was thinking like, well, what, they probably have any cracks in that much. And I don't like back and forth. If I was a director, I feel like I would have said, we're not competing, just because I would be like, well, maybe we will, maybe we won't, let's see.
But there were so many that didn't know from week to week. And it wasn't just whether the competition was gonna happen, it was
Quarantine.
how many of their students were gonna be out. So, I just say kudos to all of you who made it through that season.
Yes, me
And
too.
I'm so glad that we'll get to see smiles this year.
I know.
Oh, well, guess who is
We have
here?
our special guest of
Our
honor.
other
A special guest, a late guest, that's what you
Come
have.
in, Mr. Toney.
Should I come this way?
It's like we're on a talk show.
Well, hello.
I'm Gene Dianne is Ellen.
Oh my goodness, well, I would
Maybe we should
I went in
dance.
for it. Oh my goodness, this is fun.
No, that's for you.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's for
I
you.
need it, I got lost on the way over here.
I'm so sorry.
No, well, it wasn't here. I was on the way from Clinton, and then my phone died, and I don't know the area. So I thought, well, 220, I should go there. I thought I was going to Hattiesburg and went south and had to turn around.
Okay, I just gotta say something. This shirt, I'm in love with this shirt. Okay, the zebras. Okay, we need to make a show of our customers.
Okay, if anybody is doing a jungle,
Welcome to the jungle.
then welcome to the jungle. There's your costume right there.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You can contact me.
Yes.
We can do a little DHL
That's
special.
right. That's
We'll add some rhinestones.
It'll be
Oh,
fun.
that's fun. Well, Tony, we have covered the quality and the style of costumes.
Yes.
We're getting the judges' input and the director's input.
Well, I'm the director.
Well, he has stepped into both roles.
Well, and he can. He can.
Well, I kind of talked about just my first year of trying to get costumes and like what I didn't know and just, how your knowledge changes through the years.
And what we were trying to do in this was to help the newer
Yes,
directors.
they're just people
Because
that
there's
don't know.
such a turnover.
Well,
Because
and
we're
I
all
will-
retiring and
I will say, and I'm probably repeating stuff, but I do have to agree that, when you're a first, you're like, oh, well, that's beautiful. Well, there are a lot of things that are beautiful,
That you don't.
but you got to figure out what works for your group, what works for the different sizes that you have, and you've got to make sure that that aesthetic is something that's going to look good on stage and that your performers feel comfortable moving in, and that's sometimes easier said than done. So.
Well, it's got to hold up too.
Well, that's a big thing.
Right, that's what I didn't know. You look at pictures of stuff, and you know it's on this like 6 foot tall.
That's what we said.
Right, and, you know, girl, you're thinking, oh, that's pretty.
Well, as a rule of thumb, everything that you see, the skirts are all too short. Just know that.
Yes.
Did you really?
We said, especially for these stages that are up, and the audience is sitting there looking up.
So what I have done before, which you know sounds like a bigger deal than it is get a long dress and then cut it where you want. You know, because then you choose the length. And that sounds like a lot of work, which, I mean, I didn't do the work, so I don't know, but a seamstress.
But the thing about it is, finding a seamstress, you know, and if you're thinking directors, you know, the thing about it is, seek out resources that are in your community. Because for me, and Darren and I both taught in the same area, but there were people that became my kind of go-tos in the community. Seek those people out, let them know what you're doing, let them know what kind of organization you have, and create those connections. Because I had a colleague just this past year that had a gorgeous gown, and because they were able to do it long, they were able to tailor it and make it work for each girl. And so I agree, you did a gorgeous purple in 2012 that was long, that you actually took the entire skirt, detached it from the bodice, and moved it up to have the fullness of the skirt.
Well, we did.
Not that, you know, you was thinking it
Right. I had a mama that sewed that in Maria. Yes, because we talked about that too, about how, you know, kind of gone are the days of having so many mamas. And I can remember growing up in Clinton, and I remember in the 80s, my sisters were in Attaché, and I can remember going up to a practice, and Miss Costello had those mamas. There was sewing machines everywhere with like a sweatshop full of mamas just to sew.
Darren, I think I may have
that
said this
couldn't
to
happen
you,
anymore.
but if my maternal grandmother were living, she would still be helping me with costumes. Growing up, I'm from Lumberton, and so the choir there was called A Touch of Class.
Okay,
obviously. Yes, A Touch of Class. And so my grandmother, I can remember being a little boy and seeing this was like they would like pick a pattern and use that pattern for like 4 or 5 years, and my grandmother would be sewing everybody's show choir dresses. And
I think that's awesome.
It's a different world now though. But if she were living, she would be helping me now. But when my sisters were cheerleaders, she hand sewed every single cheerleading uniform for their little pee-wee cheerleading. So it's a different world.
My grandmother sewed too. My mama thinks she can't sew. She's one of those I can't sew. But she kind of can.
That's like, I hate sewing, and she's like, I'm like, where'd you get this? Well, I just made that myself. You know, the tablecloths just weren't good this year. I just didn't find anything that I liked for Easter, so I made this myself.
Well, must be nice.
Well, I'm gonna jump in and say one more thing about DHL. We were able this year, I think we had about 3 or 4 groups that ordered long dresses and did the exact same thing and cut them off to this specific length of each girl. So we're able to do that with in stock, but yes, it's so important.
Well, and you know, the thing about, and I love the fact, you know, in looking at some of the things that you've had over the years, you know, you have options that work for everyone's budget. So it may be one of those things where you can go and field something for somebody and they can customize it, and you can offer those options for them still. So there are a lot of things that you can do. But again, you know, even
it's figuring it out.
Well, and that's the thing, even after the sale, you know, you've got to figure out the resources that you have, and that doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
That takes some work.
It does.
Well, and you always need, especially if you're new, don't be scared to reach out to people.
All they can say is no.
I mean, anybody, another teacher, yes, everybody has had somebody that's really kind of helped them, because, you know, like we were saying earlier, you see a dress in a magazine, you're like, oh, well, that's pretty, but then you don't realize, oh, well, there's no zipper, it ties up the back. Well, you can't do that, you know, and
when I first started out back in 2000, I wasn't going to do show choir. We were going to have a show troupe.
Okay,
we were not going to compete, but we did have our costumes.
Okay.
And I'll never forget, we decided we were going to go to one competition that year, and it was pedal. Because pedal, that was their very
That was the first
competition.
year. That was their first year.
And I'll never forget, I had conversations with Gail back then, because she was at pedal, and she would kind of lead me through Dianne, don't do a show trip. If you're gonna put that many hours into it, just turn it into a show choir.
Good
So
for you.
I
Yeah.
did.
Good for her.
We did it that way.
And look at you, you did it 3
Look at you
times.
now.
And I'm done. I'm done. Let's talk about men.
Where do we start?
Well, let's talk about what looks best on a man. I mean, here's where we are, I think, in these times. And, I represent several different companies that we get our men's things through. And our suits are slim, the modern fit and the regular fit. Some of these slim suits are just too slim.
And I will say, and I've done some slim suits, but the thing about it is, and I mean, being somebody I'm a big guy.
Yeah, yeah.
When you put a slim suit on somebody like me, I mean, we're gonna bust the zippers out. I mean,
Well, and you think about the
And I
football
have.
players. But you think about the football players with the big thighs.
right.
I mean, there's no way they
Well,
can say
and I think that's the thing, you were talking about new directors, the fact that even you were bringing up the different cuts in a suit.
Uh-huh.
You've got the slim fit, you've got the tapered fit,
Right.
and then you've got the classic fit.
Uh-huh.
And so again, if you're a new director, you've
You
got to do
gotta
the
know.
work to educate yourself of, well, what's going to work.
And you also got to know your choir inside and out.
Just like the girls, you have to
Right.
be aware of the body type of the boys to know
Exactly.
because
what's
there
going to
might
work
be a
best for them.
fantastic suit, and if it only cuts in slim, well, that's not going to
It's
work.
not going to work.
And-
Sometimes I will tell you this, with the companies that I represent here, we can get the same suit and the slim cut and the
Well, that's a
modern cut.
blessing.
And
That's a
that
blessing.
is wonderful for the bigger boys.
Yeah.
Speaking on behalf of all bigger boys, thank you.
And I know when Toney taught middle school, it was a struggle because with middle school especially, you'll have a boy that's 6 feet tall and then a boy that's 4 feet tall.
Darren, I had boys that wore the size that I wore. I mean, and that's just the truth. I mean, that is so.
Yeah.
And my middle school was 6th grade through 8th grade, and you
Right.
got some of those boys that look like
Tiny.
grown men.
We did
And
your
tiny
suits
boys.
one year.
Well, do you remember we had some that were size 8,
Yes.
and then I had some that were wearing size 48.
I know.
And so you've got to find things that are in that range.
That's
and so,
difficult at times.
Yeah, but we can do that.
Well,
We
and
did
that,
it for you though.
well,
and
yes, and
It took a lot. I mean, we
it
were.
did, and
But that's where our personal attention, John delivering and picking up.
Well, and I was
delivering
just
and
going to
picking
say,
up.
if you recall, John and I love John. John's awesome. He puts up with me, but
He should have been on this.
I
He
know,
does.
I know.
Well, but the thing about it is between figuring out what worked
Yeah.
and delivery drop
Right.
off. I mean, we figured it out.
Yes,
So that
we
was
did.
a
Yes.
good little.
Well, as a matter of
resource.
fact, we did another group. Huntington North. We did Aaron.
Oh my goodness, those
And
blazers.
Children's. And
Did you?
listen, we did those. And listen, he called me. It was like in the middle of the city. And goes, Dianne, I need 3 more, and I need these sizes. And I said, when do you need them? He said, Saturday. And this was like Tuesday. I said, I'll have them. And you know what? We overnighted them, and he got them like for his competition that weekend. So we're able to step in and do some of that stuff. So, and that's different from having them custom made.
Right.
I mean, and we do for our men's suits. I'll tell you one thing that we do for groups that have a lot of guys, I'd say over 15, we usually will send a sizing line.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
One
that's
in-
helpful.
One in every size, and the directors can try on their suits on every single boy and see, what fits them best. And then we place the order after we do.
One thing that I did not know being a man who has worn suits, I did not know until I was a teacher that you don't just say like, oh, well, the jacket needs to be this size, but the pants need to be this size.
Well, and we're talking
there were
about-
times I had to order a couple extras to
Right.
kind of mix and match.
and of course,
That's
what you
we're
gotta do.
talking about suits that would be off the rack. There's typically like a 6-inch drop between the size of the blazer
Blazer
and
and
the
the
size
waist
of the
size.
pants. And
Yes.
so, but you have some custom options, which,
Right.
that's definitely a route
Right.
that you can go,
Yes.
correct? So,
Correct.
I think it's just kind of, you got to figure out the makeup of your group. And then, of course, budget is so important. And so, there may be sometimes we're doing something that's more of an off the rack that you can work with vendors.
Yeah.
You may be able to do that and make it work. So I had to learn that the hard way because sometimes you'll get this jacket and then you'll get that jacket and then you kind of figure it out.
Well, yeah, and it's like Darren said, you may end up ordering an extra suit or two
But
to make it work. But you know what? In the end, you end up using
Yes,
every single
yes.
piece of
Sure
that
enough,
suit.
when I've had to order extra pieces, somebody ripped something or
Yes.
lost something that I'm like, well, thank goodness we still have that
I
jacket.
remember one
Who
year-
cares if it's coming down to here? We're gonna roll them sleeves up and keep going.
Well, I remember one year we had some extra jackets, and we ended up the lining was interesting, and this would have been a while ago, but we did pocket squares out of the lining.
Oh, that's
because,
fun.
so if you have extras,
Yeah.
you can find a way to use them.
yeah.
Don't trust me. You'll be
absolutely.
creative with that.
Absolutely.
When I was at Opelika one time, we had this like cool jacket that we got, and you better believe, like for years after, I'd see boys post it. They would never admit that was their show choir
They were like
jacket.
a formal,
But
they were
yeah,
at a
at a
gay
formal,
party.
they're wearing that, and I'm like, oh, I like your show choir jacket. You
I
know,
know.
comment
Okay,
on it.
Darren.
so they
Especially in
know.
college.
But then
I'm
I know,
sorry,
but
I'm
then
sorry.
also recently, this pretty dress, it was
gorgeous.
pretty.
We were proud of that dress.
The blue
They
strapless
were
dress
wearing
we
the
had.
blue strapless, and there was like a purple one,
And
they were at a
then
day
a
party.
sorority thing. These girls posted it was a sorority thing, and they were like, "Oh, like tacky party or something." And I
We
was
were
like,
offended because we were proud of those dresses. They said tacky party. I
I
was
have
like,
to interrupt y'all and say that Jonathan Shue just commented Holbert and Dale.
Hey, Jonathan, we need you to come sing for us, Jonathan.
"Yeah."
But no, yes.
But that's the thing too.
They
These
make
show choir
fun of
costumes will get used for Halloween costumes.
I
You
know,
know,
I know.
so if the parents think, "Oh, they're never gonna wear that again," don't throw it away.
They take them to the college.
I mean,
Yes, I mean,
Yes.
even if you're making fun of it and saying for a tacky party, you know, you're
well,
getting
it was
some
used.
size.
It was
Yeah.
used. So
It
that's
was
what it is.
definitely used. Okay, what about jackets? I will say this. I always, for budget purposes, I always suggest to a director, get a suit, a basic suit, a navy or a black or a charcoal or something that's basic.
It's versatile.
Yes, and then you can take that jacket off and you can add a second jacket for your closer, and it just, changes the whole
There are
thing.
different
And
ways
that's
that you
easy.
can create looks that
Yes.
change the aesthetic without breaking the bank.
Right.
And it's one of those things where, and I know you've been helpful with this, you are very good with helping people figure out, like, how can we get the most for
For
our
the-
investment.
Right.
That
Well,
matters.
I'm going to tell a little secret here to you directors. My parents used to always thank me when I was directing because I would put them in a tux, maybe with an alpha stripe down the pant or a black suit, and they'd wear them for
Well, I
prom
was
or
just gonna,
something.
well, they can wear for
And it's-
prom, they can wear it for
yes, and they're
cotillion,
like,
they can wear it for
"Thank you so
debutante.
much, Diane."
Right.
Yes.
It comes
So,
in handy.
anyway, that can be done. Well, let's talk about overall effectiveness. Let's kind of close all of this down and talk
One
about.
thing, Diane, I wanted
Yeah.
to say, talking about the suit,
Yeah.
the jackets,
Yeah.
that I wanted to point out too is these days I feel like there's a lot more choices as far as like patterns of jackets and stuff. But with that being said, you
Keep
give an
talking.
example.
You keep
With that
talking.
being said, sometimes from a judging perspective, you don't want too much pattern.
Well, because it
If
can
you
look
have,
easy.
yes, it can look
It
busy on
is.
stage,
It
and
starts
if your
getting
costumes
busy,
are
but
so
look at
busy,
here.
yes.
I mean,
But see, I think that's a good example of pattern used well. It's tone on tone.
Right.
It's a bit monochromatic.
right.
So it's one of those things where it's going to catch the eye, but it's not pulling focus.
Yes.
Whereas something like this is
This is
still
going to be
effective.
specific.
Well, but it's effective because you've got some contrast there. But you wouldn't want to pair that with something that's super heavy with the girls. You've got to figure out if you're going to do some things that are kind of striking, where's your balance?
Right.
Like if this pattern was in like a loud color, you wouldn't want the girls in some kind of loud color pattern too, because
Balance.
yes, because that's gonna.
Well, you may
a
want to
judge
put them
wants
in
to
something soft.
See visual, yes. If you have
But
one
look at how
gender in
that
a loud
jacket-
pattern, you want the other gender in a solid, just so you can kind of see those pictures.
Well, and see,
But
you've
look at how
got.
that pops that.
Well, and the thing about it is, you've got some work on the bodice that kind of ties into
Yeah.
the color of the blazer, but it's not going to pull focus.
Right.
And I think that's one of those things that I'm very much a more is more type of person. And more is fine, but you've got to make sure that you do it in a way where it's still is aesthetically enhancing, but you're not pulling focus. Where it's still about the students and performance.
Sometimes when everything is so busy, your eye doesn't know where to look.
Well, you need to breathe.
And the choreography, it doesn't matter how clean it is, your eye just can't really
Well,
focus.
look at it with this.
Ooh, that's pretty.
Oh wow.
Is that not stunning?
Well, and
Okay,
you know-
this is a take on our Jackie O dress.
Oh really?
Yes. Look at this shoulder.
Oh wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
Well, what I
And
first
it's got
noticed
pockets.
is
It's got pockets.
well,
The
think
material
about
in the
this.
skirt.
I have
Avocado.
I have a story about the pockets. I taught middle school for 8 years, and we had some garments with pockets. I had the seamstress sew them up.
When we don't
I did.
want to
I
put their
did.
hands
I
in,
had
you don't
to sew
want
them
to
up.
put their hands in the
But
pockets in the middle of a show.
one thing
But
that
they
I
probably
was
put their cell phone in it and answer it during
Probably
the
did.
Look
performance.
at it,
one-
even with that.
well, but one thing that I would say about this, and if new directors or just anybody, something that is really nice about this garment is the fact that you've got some pleating. And that pleating is going to help camouflage some students that may not feel
Exactly.
comfortable. And it's something that looks striking, it's angular. That's gonna look
Right.
good. That's a very neat garment.
Here's another take on that, Tony, that I think is just a very elegant, the same type of skirt with the pleating.
Oh wow.
See?
So I have a story. You know, I love a one shoulder. And did you know who really kind of made the one shoulder a thing, Darren?
Verda.
Verda.
Sure did.
In
Oh,
1981,
yeah.
it was a
Verda, hey
Halston.
Verda.
It was a Halston design.
Was it?
It was. She did.
Like the Netflix show?
Yes, like the Netflix show, but it was a Halston design. I think it was 1981.
Do you
Verda
know-
probably doesn't even remember that.
Well, I can tell Verda. I can
Can
tell
just
Verda
tell
it was
you,
1981.
Verda was my mentor.
Well,
I learned everything that I needed to know from Verda at SCA.
wow,
Well,
believe that.
new directors,
Every
you can
year.
probably call Verda right now. She'll
Yes.
help you
Well,
too.
and you know that's the thing too
Yes.
is you've got to find those people that are willing to
And most
invest.
people are.
Most people are. I mean,
Being retired myself, and although I do this, you kind of consider it an honor when
Right.
a younger one calls you and
Well-
says, "Well, what do you think about this?" And it's like, "Oh, they asked me."
well,
you know?
but and I appreciate that because I will say, being a young director, and I was always very eager. You know that I did kind of encounter some people that maybe didn't want to give the secrets away, but then you meet those people that see someone that's young and they want to help and they want to kind of raise up that next generation. There's so many people that I appreciate because they took the time
Right.
to talk to me and
Right.
to educate me, and they were patient. I had
Yeah.
a conversation with somebody just last night for 30 minutes, and it was just them talking with me, taking the time to mentor me, and
Yeah.
those are the people that I will always be thankful for.
Right.
So,
And because of that, you will, pay it forward.
what,
That's
right, and
right,
it makes
that's
you want to
right.
help. It makes you want to help people.
That's
At some point, yes, we want to be competitive,
Right.
but the other side of that is this is still a community,
Right.
and so even the opportunity tonight to talk with
Well,
you.
and that's what I wanted to say, Tony. I feel like that our company, we really want to have this personal relationship with our directors and know that they can pick up the phone anytime and say, "Well, what do you think about that?" Or "What do you think about this?" And it's like, we're always there. We're always going to answer your questions. We're always going to answer your emails. It's not going to be 2 weeks before you hear back from us. It's going to be immediately. So, that's a service that I feel like we want that we provide for our customers.
Well, and the thing about it is, when you've got all the stressors of competition season, it's nice to know that there are people like you out there that are saying like, hey, let us come alongside you and
People that are stressing about it for you.
Yes, we're
There
the stressing
you go.
for you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
And the other thing that we enjoy so much as this company is to go to the competitions and see all the groups, whether you're in a Dianne Holbert Limited or not. It's just so fabulous to see what these directors are putting on the stages these days. All right, overall effectiveness. What do we want to talk about there?
Well, when you said overall effectiveness, one of the things that I feel like I kind of learned by doing I remember I went through a phase where I thought, oh my gosh, I just have got to have 4 costumes. And there may be a show where that's something that you need, but I will say, new directors, and Darren, you and I have talked about this, I'm not trying to be negative, but sometimes when we see that, it's very tempting to try to emulate that, and you may want to. You may want to skip on quality.
Yes,
I learned.
He talked about that.
Did you invest in quality garments and quality looks?
DHL.
What I said, I said that earlier. I was like, some of these groups, which I'm not knocking groups who have 5 different costumes.
Right.
Some
If you
people
can
pull
do
it
it,
off and it works.
it's great.
But some, groups see that and think, well, we have to do that too.
Very
and so
tempting.
they have these 5 like ugly costumes rather than having 1 or 2 really good
Well,
ones.
and I recall this very specifically, and it was actually the first year that we hosted the Magnolia Invitational at Oak Grove. There was a group that came, and the competition was over, and they were loading up, and I believe one of the parents said, and they were talking about my group that I directed at that time. They said, they come out there with 2 costumes and 60 people, and they do so well, and we're the last people here loading up with the set, and we have 4 costumes, and we can't beat y'all. It's not about competition, but I do think that is a testament to,
Where's your emphasis?
well, at the end, when you think overall, use garments that enhance the story that you're telling. Use garments that enhance the show, and pick quality garments.
That they're going to feel confident.
Well, they feel confident in, because at the end of the day, and I feel like I can also speak because even as a current director, I've had some really great opportunities to still adjudicate in other states. I come from the other side of the table of, if I'm a director, I'm looking out for you. Like if I were watching my group, what would I tell my group?
Yeah.
And so I would say, use your effort and your time with working with your show and your design. Pick 2 great garments that are quality that the kids feel good in, and let that be it. And I know you'll help them along the way with that. So that's my 2 cents about that.
One thing that that is not something I ever thought I would have to become like an expert on, being a man and being a show choir director, which I feel like is very important that these new teachers might need to know about, is a bra.
Undergarments.
Undergarments.
I mean,
They're not all created equally. And I just had a flashback because I even at Northwest and at Oak Grove, I would have like the costume mom, and I would say, "Note from the costume mom," and it's kind of outlining
You have
that.
to as a man.
Well, you do, but also those are things they never teach you in college when you're getting your music degree. Thank God for good music degree and good training. But
let's talk about that, the undergarments.
Yeah,
For
let's.
instance, I hate to go back to this one, but I am, because it's got these little thin straps. Okay, this thin strap we can make into this more substantial strap.
Yeah.
Well, that first of all makes the girl feel more confident, and it might give you a different option for an undergarment. I always suggest a long nude corset.
That's what I made my girls get 1 year, and the parents complained because it was like $80.
Oh yeah, but
But what I said is, I was like, look, I'm not a girl, but I'm thinking a girl could use
Yes.
a good strapless bra
Right.
in their closet.
Exactly.
But the other side of that is, and I just looking at the garment that you have in your hand, look at the construction of it. The cups are
Isn't that
quality
gorgeous?
cups. They're gonna feel confident in that, and that's something that I would have never thought about.
It's the truth.
That was pretty.
But what I was about to tell you with this is we try to, and if it's not on the sample and the director requests it, we will raise the back
Oh,
so that
wow.
it covers the bra.
Okay.
So that's always an option.
Well,
with
that's
us.
another thing looking at
So here's
garments
the back
online.
right here. We can raise that back.
You
like
know, you
that.
see those garments. I mean, I saw a group. This would have had to have been a few years back. It was this heavily sequined red dress, and they turned around, and
There was nothing on the back.
it was very uncomfortable.
Like,
It
could
was-
you see their undergarments?
Well,
or
you
they weren't
couldn't,
there?
but it was something that someone would have seen online, and they ordered,
Yes,
and they had the
yes.
entire ensemble in it, and it was uncomfortable to watch, and it was the product of an unexperienced director.
Well-
that had no
Well,
clue what
look
they
at
were
that.
doing.
When you just said that, look at the back of that.
Well, and
It's as
it's-
intricate as
well,
the front
but they're
is.
gonna feel comfortable in that.
Yeah.
This specific
When I was an
example.
inexperienced
Yeah.
teacher, I had girls that just couldn't find the right undergarment, so they just went without.
That makes me
And you're changing on the side of the
That
stage,
makes me
you're
really-
all the like
Actually,
dads.
I've had girls that use duct tape, I'm just not gonna lie here, they tape themselves into their costumes.
Oh my.
Yes, it
I've
hurts.
got to. Can we get a refill?
I think we all need this subject.
But
It's an
like
important
But
subject.
like you said, that is something that you don't
Let's talk
say.
about men though. This is what I always had my boys do.
Compression
Yes.
garments.
Black.
They have to.
Black.
With an indiscreet band, they gotta have it.
Yes. that's
Well,
exactly
yes,
right.
that's a big thing, is the shirts coming untucked.
Right.
Well, and I will
It's
say
like
that
there's
was
never a great solution. I mean, one year I had a mama that sewed, and she put some kind of like snap Velcro kind of
so it was a
contraption that came
traditional-
between their legs.
Well, you call that a shirt stay. Very popular.
Now I know.
Well, very popular in the military. If you
Yes,
talk to someone in the
yes.
military, they would know exactly. So that was called a shirt stay. And it's an elastic. It clips on the shirt, and it actually goes over, and it kind of goes under, and it helps keep in place.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to invest in that, a simple solution for that is a quality compression short
Exactly.
that they tuck the shirt into, and it works. But here's the
Oh.
thing: you've got to make sure they wear them.
Well, I know. And one year, this was at Long Beach, I think, we were in Orlando, and we were going to finals. No, we were in, anyway.
Today I'm dating myself, but do you remember when I was in 10th grade and 11th grade, I used to drive to the coast?
Yes,
So
he would come to my shows when I was.
I would have that, my mother would say, "You're going where? Where do you go?"
Hey, you're dating me is what you're doing. But what I was about to say was the little boys, one of the little boys' shirts was totally untucked through the whole show.
It's
It was on
unprofessional.
the video. And you know what? We went from like second runner up to fourth runner up.
Well, people
and I
love
looked
to-
at him and I said, "You did it. You did not. You did not tuck your shirt that
But
way."
people love to say that that doesn't matter, but here's the thing,
does
when you talk about
matter.
quality of competition and all you see is tails, that's immature, you know?
And it's not putting
So,
the cherry
Again,
on the.
that's one of those things as a
You
new
don't
director,
want-
I didn't know that. I didn't know that. and I
From a
have to learn
judging perspective, I'm not gonna like dog
But you
a
have-
group for somebody's
Well,
shirt
that's
tails
how they
being
is.
out. However, your eye is gonna go to that.
It is, it is.
Because that's making them stand out.
Well, I
So
think
your
it's a-
eye's gonna go to that, and that's gonna maybe distract the judge from everything else that they should be looking
Well, I
at.
think it's a
as
point
a-
of professionalism.
Well, for
And I
sure.
think as a new director, there are lots of those little details. Eric Van Cleve is perfect at going over all the details. Verda was perfect at it, and if
Well-
you need any of that, reach out to
Well,
somebody.
one of the
because-
things that I I was so thankful for Darren. The year before I started teaching, I went to SCA with your students, and I remember one of the things that a workshop that I went to. It was called "Small Things That Make a Big Difference," and I've carried that with me. Give me 1 second, I'll think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
I can see
Cause
it in my
it was,
mind.
and y'all,
Maybe
that's,
under Verda.
No,
that's
Give me a
why
second, I'll
we
think about
miss SCA, during these times, and I know.
well,
we're
and
gonna
I hate to do a plug,
camp.
but I have to say, I'm signed up for virtual.
Yes, and you need to do it.
I'm signed up. If
We'll
you're
be
a
on there
teacher,
also.
Sue posted on her Facebook page,
Yes.
she posted in the I'm a choir director
Yes.
page with the workshops, and the workshops are quality. I'm signed up for
they're-
virtual,
they're
and even
wonderful.
though I have stuff going on, I've got it set. I'm
Yeah.
going to this one. So if
Well,
you're a new
go ahead.
director,
Yes.
sign up for virtual.
And it also starts on Sunday afternoon. We showcase our costumes at 1:30
Oh,
on
okay.
Sunday afternoon,
Awesome.
July the 11th. So make sure you tune in and see some of the models of
Cool.
the dresses. Because it's one thing to see it hanging on a hanger.
Yeah.
It's another thing to see it. Okay, we've had way too much fun.
We had,
I was late to the party, so I probably repeated some things.
No,
but-
it's fine. But I thank y'all so much for, this is what I wanted it to be. I want us to be able to relate to our directors, and we want to let you know that we're available for appointments. We're available for FaceTiming and Zoom calls. And all you have to do is email, call me. I think we're kind of everywhere on social media. I'm sorry, but I have a wonderful graphic artist, graphic designer. But we would love to help you set your group apart. Thank y'all.